stop beating yourself up. When you look at your current situation, when you look at where you've come from, don't just see the weeds. Don't just see the dead things. Make sure that you're not missing the lesson, the green leaves, the growth. Welcome to Joy in the Pivot. I'm Dr. Phyllis, your host. And today, in episode 35, I want to continue our discussion about permission to pivot. Last week, I discussed with you in part one why it's important for you to grant yourself a hall pass by letting go and letting God. Let me ask you this week, do you feel the main reason why you just can't seem to pivot your thinking, your mindset, and move forward into a new season, a new chapter that God is calling you to, is because you just can't stop beating yourself up? When you think about where you are, when you think about what's happened, your mind is just continually on what you said. Well, maybe if you didn't say this, maybe if you'd done this, or why did I spend so much money or time on that? And why did I do this? And if I hadn't done that, I'd be further along. Or, they don't understand me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I should just be excited or happy where I am. Why do I think this way? It's too late. Does that sound like you? Do you find that you just keep beating yourself up or replaying what happened? Life has come to a crossroads. You're coming out of something that was deep, just a major season, and you just can't stop beating yourself up. I know, I've been there. And it was interesting that why this came to my mind. This morning, actually, I was out in my little garden. Many of you may remember that I've jokingly called myself one of those gardeners by accident, or unintentional gardener, because part of me always wanted to have a garden. I try to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and just trying to do better, right? You got to try to take care of ourselves so we can be here and do our part. And the bottom line is, I thought that I was going to a organic community garden to buy produce. That's what I thought I was buying. And got there and actually was buying seedlings. So I tried to play it off, let me tell you, but I was totally shocked when I went to pick up my pre-ordered, prepaid produce and was given major racks of seedlings. So I said, okay, well, you wanted to have a garden, so here we go. So I just stuck them in the ground. I didn't even, I don't know what I'm doing. I tried to go on and look up some things on how to do what. A lot of it I learned afterwards, but I just stuck them in the ground and watered. That's just, I have other stories about growing sweet potatoes that, they put you through this whole thing and they tell you about cutting them and getting the roots out. And I will stick a sweet potato in the ground that has started sprouting that, I haven't eaten yet. And I've done it, and I've actually grown a lot of sweet potatoes. One year I cooked them for Thanksgiving. So that's why I call myself one of those unintentional or gardeners by mistake, but it's worked. I have no problem taking the risk. I'm going to go for it. So, as I was out in the garden this morning, because I was just overdue, I've just overdue to get rid of some of the dead branches of different plants. My tomatoes are growing to the max right now, but I have been overflowing with squash, with summer squash. And I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have to forgive me because I have one of my dogs. It's notorious, one of the two, as I'm recording, that either decides to snore or ruffles up their bed to try to get more comfortable. So if you hear that in the back, you may not. But if you do, I'm just going to keep recording because this is what life is. And that's what I tell you. You just have to keep rolling with it and don't try to be perfect. So back to the garden. So I was out in the garden because I was just overdue getting rid of some of the overgrown. I had weeds out there. I had just some of the squash vines that they had died, and I just hadn't had a chance to go out and cut them off. And so my gardener knows, don't touch my garden, he doesn't want to hear me fuss. So and plus I enjoy it. It's been really a blessing just to get out. It doesn't take long. I mean, 15 minutes. It leaves me with such a good feeling that I've done something with my hands and dealing with the dirt and seeing things grow and to know that I could do it. So anyway, back to these squash. I've told this story and my family laughs because I bought, again, remember now, I went to the organic garden, community garden, and I'm thinking I'm buying, like, I think there were like 6 butternut squash. I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy 6 squash. That'll be great." Now, that means I bought 6 seedlings. So over the past year, I have been overflowing with squash because each of the 6 plants have grown, and I have shared with everyone squash to the point that, to be honest, I've had to take a break from squash. That's just how many I had. I had so So anyway, so I was out there, getting the weeds out, cutting away the weeds and getting rid of the dead branches of the squash vine. And some of the vines look like they really are bad. Like I'm like, they're dead. There's nothing growing out of them. I see there are some other plants that are green. So I'm doing my very best to only cut away the dead vines. So as I'm cleaning, I'm trimming the dead vine. And as I'm pulling it out, I realize that on that dead vine is actually green leaves further down. So what looks like it's all dead, actually at the end, because it's further down, because they squash are like pumpkin vines. They follow the sun and they just grow. They'll grow in length. So I have what looks like at its where it attaches to the main squash plant, right? Looks like it's dead. I'm like, "Oh, that has to be the part that's dead because there's a bunch of dead leaves laying around." Only to find, as I have tracked it down and I've trimmed it, and so I'm pulling it, right? Getting it up so I could put it in the trash. There actually were green leaves down there. And it was really humbling because it made me think of my journey, and it made me think of you. How many times, again, do you beat yourself up? Because I've beat myself up. How many times have you've beaten yourself up so much you can't move forward because you're so focused on the discomfort or the embarrassment, the disappointment, maybe the financial loss associated with the experience? So much. You're so caught up in the negative part, because that's what Satan will do. He'll have us focus on what we think we didn't do well. So you're so caught up in the negative part that you can't see the growth. You can't see the green leaves. And I want to let you know, stop beating yourself up. And when Satan brings those thoughts, you say, yeah, I'm human. There's only one Jesus and I'm not him. I'm human. God knows I'm human because there's a lesson for you to grow from in the midst of the weeds, in the midst of the negative. So that's why I'm calling this episode today, Spotting the Growth Along with the Weeds, because sis, you're only human. Yet if you can spot the growth in yourself, spot the lesson, learn from the lesson, embrace the lesson in the midst of the negative, the discomfort, you can find joy in your pivot zone, in the midst of your pivot. Because pivots are just pivots, crossroads. You'll hear me say a lot, they're defining moments. They define what and who we're made of. And if you really look at your life, wouldn't you agree that your life has been a series of decisions you've had to make, a series of situations that you've come up against, and you've had to change your way of thinking? Now, if we don't change our way of thinking or embrace the lesson, look for what God was trying to teach us, and embrace how we've grown through that, so we don't have to go back through that again. If you're able to do that, then the experience has done its job. We're not meant to be stagnant. We don't come here born with all of the information. We don't have a crystal ball. We have experiences. Now, Lord willing, we can avoid some experiences, but let us all look at it. Let's really think about it, sis. All of us, if we're really honest, we've made some decisions either as young people, as children, or young adults, or adults. If we keep living, we're all going to make at least one, if not more, decisions that we might say, oh God, why did I do that? All of us. But if you don't make decisions, if you don't allow yourself to step out and potentially make a mistake, or maybe make make a little wrong turn, it's okay. I always say, Lord, just give me the discernment so I can fail fast. So I'm always listening. I'm looking for signs, and I want you to do it too. If you know the old saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained, which means if you don't try, how will you know? How will you grow? And Satan, as I stated, will just get in our ear, because I've had to tell him to go sit down somewhere and take 5, if not take a week or take whatever, and leave me alone. Because he knows when you're right there getting ready to take the next step. And he's going to try to remind you daily of what you did wrong or what you thought or what you said, because he doesn't want you to move forward. He will tell you you're not worthy. He will tell you you're not enough. He will tell you you're not lovable. He will tell you that it's too late. He will tell you all of those things. He will tell you, well, look what you did. You spent all of this time studying all those years, and this is where you're at. And why aren't you satisfied? Why are you trying to do something else? Look at how old you are. How are you going to be able to do that? Your dreams are too big. He's a liar. He's going to, that's his job. And he does not waste his time with people who aren't going anywhere. He wants to get you because God has put something in you. He's birthed you to be bigger and better and to make and to continually make a difference in your life and the life of other people around you. He wants you. So what does he do? He takes a place of us that we're sensitive about, that we can get triggered about, or we might regret, or we might feel like we didn't do the right thing, or we wasted time, or we did this, and he will just make it bigger than life. He'll do it when you're tired, when you're depleted, when you're you're disappointed, someone's disappointed you, something didn't work out the way you want it. You had a plan, and it didn't work out that way. He's going to tell you, see, you messed up. That's why it didn't work. Sis, it didn't work because God didn't want it to work. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have tried, because how do you know? But what did you learn in that experience? What did you learn? I can tell you that when I pivoted, as many of us had to do in 2019, 2020 is when I say that God had been, and probably before 2019, he'd been trying to get my attention. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way. And God kept talking and I kept ignoring. When he really got my attention and I stopped and I really did the deep work that transformed my life, of course, first thing that came up, I was like beating myself up. Why didn't you listen to God earlier? Why didn't you do this? Why did you try to, do more of this at the job instead of listening to him? He was telling you that it was time to move on, but you kept wanting to stay there. Oh, Satan wanted to do a mind job on me. It took a while. And I'm going to tell you, sis, every day I still have to tell him, nothing is wasted that I went through. I grew through it. It's a daily journey, but I am so blessed for the journey because now I have some lessons, some notes, right, that I can go to. Because if it wasn't for the deep work I had to do with my job and with everything else that I was trying to write my own narrative about, I would have not been prepared to go through the pivoting when my mom passed away. When God told me it's time to pivot from medicine and really get into his ministry of women's ministry as a transformational coach. Nothing is wasted. Nothing. And just like you, sis, there's some rough days. There's some rough days, but stop beating yourself up. You're not supposed to be perfect. I feel you're just supposed to learn. All of this is a part of giving yourself permission to pivot is stop beating yourself up. When you look at your current situation, when you look at where you've come from, don't just see the weeds. Don't just see the dead things. Make sure that you're not missing the lesson, the green leaves, the growth. Make sure you see your growth and you embrace your growth. And you say, hey, you know what? I've done pretty well. In the midst of everything I've gone through, I'm still standing. Says, if you can't say nothing more than, I'm still here. I'm still putting one foot in front of the other. If nothing else, that's something to be celebrated. That God brought you through. And this is just the beginning. So I want you to continue to work to give yourself permission to pivot your thinking so you can pivot your feet into where God wants you to be, so He can have you fulfill the purpose that He has created you for. And when you do that, and as you do that, you are going to find joy. Not just the up and down of happy in midst of external or material things, but that joy that you are experiencing life and you are embracing every moment and you are learning to laugh at yourself, laugh at life, and keep moving, keep growing. I'm here rooting for you because I know that God has created you for much, much more. And I'm here for you. I love you. Don't you forget to spot the growth along with recognizing the weeds. Spot your growth. Don't beat yourself up. Stop beating yourself up. Recognize when you're beating yourself up and recognize that Satan is just trying to do a mind job on you. And know that God loves you. I hope that you have found encouragement from today's show. I ask you to like and share, and I will see you next week at Joy in the Pivot. Take care. Love you. Be safe and be well and keep moving.